So to introduce myself, I am Sivan Lieber. I'm the joyous parent. I am first and foremost a play enabler. That is what I call myself. I am a play enabler. I am starting the play revolution, and I am bringing play back to the mainstream. If you know, I'm there. I'm in it. So, and I am recruiting play enablers like myself, one family, one caregiver, one educator at a time, so that we can return to the type of learning and growth and development and childhood that our children deserve. So I'm just so super delighted to be here. And a little bit of my background, I was a classroom teacher for 15 years in the Bronx, and then in Harlem, and then in Brooklyn. I mostly taught first grade. I've taught the spectrum of neurodiversity and experiences and abilities and modalities that there is. And I've always had a very specific social justice lens in my classrooms, in addition to an ableist approach and also a self-advocacy approach for children. And throughout my 15 years, I always worked really hard to not only breed community and this awareness of neurodiversity and how fair is actually not everybody gets the same thing. Fair is everybody gets what they need in the truest equity lens stance that there is. But not only that, I've worked really hard in my first grade classrooms, in my kindergarten classrooms, in my third grade classrooms, and also now with my 4-year-old daughter who acts like a 14-year-old sometimes, to really empower children to advocate for their own needs and empower parents and caregivers and educators alike to be able to support them in that self-advocacy and also give them the tools, resources, and language to support them. So that's a whole other presentation. I feel like I could come back here several times. I would love to. I'd be delighted to. But today we're going to talk about something that's really dear to my heart. We're going to talk about balancing and grounding yourselves first. Because the way I see it, we can have all of these things that we hope for our children and all of these ways of existing. And maybe we have discussed with our co-parenting partner and love village, as I like to call it, our expansive community of support about who and what we want to be as parents. But if we don't fill our own cups and we don't support ourselves first, none of the rest works. So today, we're going to be talking about this paradigm shift that I really am excited to celebrate with you today. And I invite this to be an interactive conversation. I invite you to share your truth and pop into the discussion whenever you feel moved. I invite you to journal or reflect or participate in any way that feels good to you. And as Julia said, we did send out a workbook link, and I'm just going to copy and paste it right now into the chat in case you would like to access it and follow along that way. You might also want to follow the journal later after the presentation and just kind of reflect in that way. So I'm going to start the presentation, and we're going to get started. Share my screen. It's going to load. There we go. Should be loading in a moment. Okay, so here we are, from painful to playful parenting, the 4 parenting pillars to live by. And the 4 parenting pillars are based on 4 agreements, 4 truths that I have found in my time as an educator and my tenure as a social justice activist, and also as a parent, that there are 4 things that usually when we're in the muck, like I like to say, in the muck of parenthood, and we're in a challenge, oftentimes it's because we're not honoring one of these 4 pillars. And so I'll talk a little bit about some of them right now, but we're going to talk about this paradigm shift that I spoke to, which I like to call caterpillar to butterfly parenting. So I'll get into that with you. But first, let's make sure that you're all set up and ready. I want to invite you to just get comfortable. I've got my coffee, I've got my chocolate and strawberries. Get yourselves in a comfortable seat, give yourselves a beautiful pen and notebook, whatever you need to really be able to be even 5% more comfortable right now, so you can really enjoy this experience. And I just want to speak to number 3 about shame for just a moment. Because here's the thing, all of us, every single one of us, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the presentation, are led by either shame, fear, or anger. Who can relate to that? Write that in the chat. Which one do you relate to the most? And that's a little of a sneak peek into later in the conversation. I'm led by shame, and I think many other parents are led by shame. And all 3, exactly, right? All 3. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So when those feelings come up, when we are triggered and we are kind of inside the story, in that muck, a lot of times we are blind to it and we are just driven and led by it. What if instead, to quote Elizabeth Gilbert in her brilliant book, Big Magic, we were to say instead, hello, shame. She talks about fear, but I say shame as a mother, specifically in Western culture in America. Hello, shame. Welcome. You are welcome here. I know you. I get you. You are my best friend sometimes, unintentionally. You can be with me, but you're in the back seat. I'm in the driver's seat. Okay? So I just wanted to speak to that. And if and when shame comes up at any point during this conversation, don't hold back. Just let it move through you. It takes about 90 seconds for an emotion to move through and out of our body if we let it. If we don't block it, ignore it, or push it down. So let's just let those emotions move through us and just don't hold back. Ask the questions and let's hope to get some emboldened loveliness here, okay? So, and as Ella would say, okay, great. And I would also like to say, your kids are welcome. Life is welcome in the background. Do whatever you need to do. Get up whenever you need to. Take a stretch, all of it. Okay, beautiful. So the things that I hope that you will walk away with. I am hoping that at the end of this experience together, you'll get just a little teeny bit more complete with how your parenthood has felt up to now. And we're going to talk into that mess. We're gonna face it. We're gonna still see the overwhelm of all the anxiety that parenthood leads to, especially when in the paradigm of the world that we're in right now and everything that we're experiencing as parents already. But we're gonna shift into walking into that same muck, that same mess, and hopefully seeing it from a perspective that serves instead. And I'm gonna give you some practical tools to help shift from what I call painful to playful parenting, or from caterpillar to butterfly parenting, which is basically what these little critters are for. So to begin, I want to invite you to just breathe for a moment. And if this is not your jam, the first 3 pages of the workbook are for some journal reflection. So what I want to invite us to do is just get comfortable in our seats, if you like, and just settle in and allow yourself to either close your eyes or have a soft gaze downwards. And I'm going to invite us to just breathe in through our noses and out through our mouths. 3 loving, buoyant breaths. So we're going to breathe in the love into our nose, hold the love, and then breathe the love out. So breathe it in, hold the love in, feel it, and just let it out. And breathing the love in, holding it, and this time an audible sigh out. And for this last breath, I invite you to breathe in the most beautiful, buoyant breath you've taken all day. And just let it out with a sigh. And I want to invite you right now just to loosen the muscles around your eyes, your jaw, your upper back, your lower back, your chest, opening up the tightness that might be in your chest. And opening up, giving some space around your inner organs. Letting your arms grow heavy at their sides and letting your body just lean in and root down a little bit more into the seat. Just let Mama Earth hold you for a moment. And I invite you to let go of any to-do lists or anything that has been bothering you. Just let them go to the side, flow off your shoulders and down just for a moment. And always breathing. And I invite you to just start to let go of whatever no longer serves. And to lean in instead into celebrating just one thing that has gone beautifully in your parenting. It can be big or small. Just let that image come in. It might be a feeling, an idea, a picture in your mind, a memory. For me, today, I want to celebrate that I cried in front of my daughter and that was okay. And just shifting into a mode of self love and care and gratitude and trying to push away the negative self talk that might come up. And if you're in the journal, I invite you to reflect around what negative self talk might be coming up. And I invite you instead to greet yourself as you would your best friend, because we deserve to be one another's best friends, ourselves, the best friend of ourselves. Just think of what you might say to yourself if you were showing the love to someone else and supporting them. And just allowing that to move through our bodies. Notice how it feels to be alive today. And taking one more big buoyant breath in through our noses and out through our mouths. And lastly, I shared what I hope our goals will be for this time, but I want to invite you to set an intention for yourself from this time that we're sharing right now. Perhaps a word or a phrase around what you hope to get out of this time together today. And may it be so. It already is so. And whenever you are ready, I invite you to start to wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, move your body however it needs to. And when you are ready, and only when you're ready, focus on the point in the room. And welcome back. Lovely. Thank you, everybody. Oh, and thank you, Sean, for sharing your intention of joy. Would anyone else like to unmute themselves or write in the chat what your intention might be? I'd love to hear them. Okay, beautiful. So today, I want to talk about shifting from caterpillar to butterfly parenting as a daily practice. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that means and what it looks like. Because here's the thing, this is how I feel as a parent. Oftentimes, right, here I am playing with my daughter. It's a lovely moment. We're connecting. We're having so much fun. It's so beautiful. Can you relate to that? Write it in the chat or wave. But then this is also how I feel as a parent. Quite often. Can anyone relate to that? And yeah, I see some nods. Absolutely right. And the truth is that it's somewhere in between, right? And Julia, thank you for your intention of fun. Thank you so much. Oh, and God, yes, always, yeah, right? So exactly. So this is both the truth, right? And it's all it all gets to be okay. It all gets to be real. It is the way it is. I love that funny smiley face like that. Absolutely, right? So in your journal, I invite you to just reflect upon your two phases as a parent and just to celebrate them both if you'd like. You might also want to do that later on. But right, just knowing and acknowledging that both of these are real, right? So here's what I want to talk about today, because I also feel like this is a parent sometimes. Can anyone relate to that? Felt like that a couple times yesterday, for sure. I'm single parenting, by the way, for a month. So that's been really interesting. I also feel like this as a parent. And I want to tell you a story about that. So here's my story. There once was a caterpillar. And all it knew in the world was leaf munching, right? Everything in its world was leaves, right? It ate leaves and it lived on leaves and it believed that leaves were its entire world, right? And this is what the caterpillar believes is the only way to live until it learned a very mysterious secret. And you all probably know it already because you learned it in school. This beautiful flying creature comes along one day and says, "You're actually going to fly one day. You're going to leave this leaf world and you're going to even exist on different things." And the caterpillar's like, "What? No, absolutely not. This is crazy talk." But who knows? And go ahead and unmute yourselves here. What does the caterpillar need to do in order to turn into a butterfly? Does anyone know what it actually does in order to be in the chrysalis?
Patience.
Rest.
Say it again. I think two people said it at once.
Oh, I said patient.
Yes. So they turn into goo. These butterflies literally turn into goo. Can you imagine? They do rest, but in order to get to that rest, they turn into goo. They have to relinquish control of every single thing that they know and believe and think about the world in order to become this incredible, phenomenal creature that flies around and dazzles us every day. So I'm sure that's what it feels like, right? When the caterpillar discovers this, it's like, what? And as parents, we also need to relinquish into the goo in different ways, don't we? But it's really hard. It's really hard. So this is what happens with the caterpillar, right? So now it knows that there's another more free, more beautiful way of living. It's heard about this. It understands the paradigm, but it's pretty skeptical still. And the butterfly comes along and he just doesn't agree, right? Just doesn't buy it. And mostly it's because the caterpillar is, in my opinion, fear-led, shame-led, or anger-led, or trapped in the story of what the caterpillar believes they need to be in order to survive and be a good caterpillar. But at some point, the caterpillar does make a bold decision, right? It relinquishes into the goo. It goes for it. It does it. It starts to understand the moment that it kind of gives way to faith a little bit and trusts in its own knowing, not in the story that it's been told. And the caterpillar surrenders. Even in the muck, literal muck, right? And then when it emerges, it's important to state things aren't perfect, right? Does anybody know the lifespan of the monarch butterfly? At least I know. I think it's something like 3 days. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, someone who knows better about butterflies, but they don't last for long. They go through this huge transformation, but they get to live these 3 incredible, beautiful days. And it's in this totally different paradigm, but the world is still the same. And the only difference between its existence as a caterpillar versus a butterfly is that its mindset is shifted because it's relinquished. It discovers that it could have all that it wanted when you relinquished the how, which is one of my 4 pillars for joyous parenting. and it's pretty beautiful. And it's also still hard, but that's when we start. So I want to invite you right now to just reflect upon that from the perspective of our parenting lives and our parenthood. Because there's the paradigm of how we see ourselves as a parent before we become parents. There's the paradigm of expectations about what people believe parenthood should look like and feel like in order to be successful or raising good kids or right kids or kids who are high achievers and all of that. And I hope all of you are seeing the air quotes that I'm putting up, right? And then there's the parenthood that actually is the day to day, right? And we get to be both. And all of us are kind of in it on both sides. So I want to invite you to reflect for a moment about in what ways are you a caterpillar parent? And then when thinking about that, I invite you to think about what you can relinquish. What little bit of the goo in your own life can you lean into so that you might experience a different path? Because that's when we're ready. When we start to step out of the story and see ourselves from a different light and our experiences from a different light, not from what society has told us it needs to look like and feel like, but actually when we align with ourselves, which is another pillar, aligning with our knowing. So before I share one of my own caterpillar to butterfly stories, and I have many, I'd love to hear from all of you. What speaks to you here? Does anybody have an anecdote or an idea to share, either in the chat or just sharing out about your caterpillar parenting? And then I'm going to share mine.
Please feel free to speak up if anyone has a thought or wants to share.
I'll share.
Thought. Oh, go ahead, Sean. You go first.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is in line completely with the prompt, but you said something that made me realize that I never really thought back on what my expectation was before becoming a parent. I think some do, and that's fine. I didn't think too deeply into that. But there is one thing that I'm realizing just now that, or maybe I've realized it before, but able to connect it to this topic. The one thing that I can say before having my first child, and my first child is the one that has a disability. I have 3 others after her. But one thing that I realized I really did expect or desire or want to be as a parent was the sense of connection. I'm going to have this amazing connection with my daughter. And that's something to this day that I'm still grieving, because it's incredibly hard to for a lot of us with kids with special needs. It's sometimes hard. Sometimes I don't mean to generalize, but that expectation of connection has changed because it's not done in the quote unquote normal whatever way. Either because there isn't able to be verbal communication, or it's difficult to form an emotional connection there's just a lot of different, reasons. So I think that's still something that I'm grieving, that I wish I could give more to her and also wish she could give more to me.
Emily, thank you so much for sharing that. And that's just such a powerful thing to relinquish, right? And it's so hard. This expectation of how we think our relationship with our children is going to look and feel, and then it being completely different. And while I don't have the experience of parenting a child with special needs, I have 15 years of experience teaching many children with special needs. And I can say it never ends, right? There's this paradigm of how we expect and things to run and feel and look, and then there's reality. And so how can we then kind of just relinquish into, okay, this is our version of reality, and it's also beautiful. It might not look and feel the way that we wanted it to or how other people expect it to, but there is a beauty in it. So I really appreciate you sharing your truth and your story today. Thank you. I know there was one more person that wanted to share, right? Was it Sean?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
One situation that I think was like a really huge decision in our lives. It's just not just, but it's my son and I, who is on the autism spectrum, but was the homeschooling when we made the decision to homeschool. Um, and the terror, that's what I will say it was. It was like terror because it's such a big decision, and I was terrified that we would be too enmeshed and that I wouldn't be able to give all these things and not only be like the parent, but also the teacher and the guide. And I will have to say, this is what's been well over a year, is we started right before COVID for a multitude of reasons, nothing real traumatic other than my child just refused to go to school because it was just so stressful. And so I will say that to kind of encompass everything that's happened, it hasn't been like all peaches and cream by any means. However, it has been one of the best decisions that I've made. And one thing in my terror that I read, and I don't know who said it, but I use it as a wall hanging, but it's like this macrame it says, "What if I fall?" And then the response is, "Oh, my darling, what if you fly?" So that has been this entire experience. And that me seeing that, and I still get goosebumps, helped me to let go and to be able to fly and to allow my child to be able to fly. And those words, the surrender, the trust, and emerge, is all happening. Sometimes over and over again. It's not just like one linear experience. So
Who relates to that?
thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sean. You brought up so many things that I want to say, but then we'll run out of time. But the thing I will say is, I think that it was Emily who also spoke to this, and I'll jump off of the slideshow for just a moment to speak to it, is this idea of setting intention for how and what we want our parenthood to look and feel like before having children. And I also think it's never too late. But this speaks to this idea of values-based parenting, right? Because then what happens is when we're in the muck, right? And here's one description of the muck. You walk into the room and there's the pile of laundry and the kids are screaming in the corner and you're resentful of your partner who is just like standing there happy-go-lucky and not doing anything. Can anyone relate to all of this? And then you also have yes, Francesca, yes, right? Like, and yes, you're doing laundry. That's great. Right. And then maybe there are also all these to-dos that you've already done and also are about to address. Right. You get the picture. It's the stress ball. It's the muck. Right. Yes. Everything, all of it. And we walk into it and we say, you better clean up your toys or else. Right. Or whatever we say. Right. Or go to your room, or you can't touch that until you clean, or the array. Just pick and choose an option here. Right. And then your room is a mess. Your room is a mess. So here's my question to us all, is that if you are a person who is demanding that your children pick up after themselves, which is something that we're all supposed to believe that we're supposed to do as parents, right? And your room is a mess, just to use a very simplistic example, is that really something you care about and value? Truly. For real, right? And so now, if it is, awesome. If that is a family value, then make it so. Then it is also our responsibility as the parents, as the people who are in this home, who are co-creating this experience with our family, to also keep our rooms clean, right? But if it's not a value, then I say, have fun, hire the housekeeper right before mom comes to visit, right? And focus on the things that matter to you, right? So that's kind of what I mean when I talk about shifting out of caterpillar parenting to butterfly parenting. Does that make sense, everybody? Right? Does that, I want to know how that resonates in the chat, or maybe just like giving me nods or something like that, a thumbs up or down, right? Because that, yay, I see some thumbs up, that's great, right? Because that's what it's all about. We do all these things to ourselves because we believe we're supposed to as parents. But what would happen, what might be if we just took a step back for just a split second and asked ourselves what we really believe and how we want to lead our lives as parents and beyond. And I believe in your workbook, I put the parenting gardens somewhere in that workbook. I invite you to look at them because they all feed into one another, right? If we have an outlandish expectation in our professional life, or our relationship garden, or our home garden, or whatever it is, our self-care garden, that's all going to feed into our parenthood and make it either a beautiful experience or an incredibly stressful one. But the muck is the same. It's just all about how you approach it. So that's what I want to talk. That's what this topic is today, right? That's what it's all about. So again, it can be anything, right? But the other piece of values-based parenting, which is so my favorite thing ever, and I think this works with neurodiverse children, normative children, the whole spectrum, is this idea of, and people in general, not just with children, just people, humans, is this idea of, if we're leading our parenthood from a space of values, and I'll talk about this a little bit at the very, very end, then it takes ourselves out of the power struggle, because then it shifts from clean up your things or else to, in our home, we value sustainability. And we want to care for our things so that they are beautiful and pristine enough to hand down to our grandchildren. That's what I say to my daughter all the time, and what I said in my classrooms. So let's work together. Let's be partners in caring for our things. What do you think we should do first? Do you see how that takes you out of the power struggle? Because it's not about you. It's about the shared value. And when we co-create that value, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I got excited by this thought that Emily brought up. Everything shifts in our parenting. So I hope that resonates with you, and please share in the chat what your thoughts are. I'm going to continue to move on into shifting a little more from caterpillar to butterfly parenting. And I wanted to share one of my stories because this is real. I am not a parent coach because I'm a perfect parent. And I also want to say, I call myself a joyous parent, but that doesn't mean I'm happy all the time. What it means is that even when I'm in the muck, I just know how to approach it, mostly because I yelled at the first 5 years of my classrooms. I'm so sorry, children. Survive those first years, to the point where I finally got it at some point, and to the point where I've never yelled at my child. I literally have never yelled at my child. And I know that might seem a little shocking to some of you, and some of you might be skeptical about that, but it really is because I've just learned how to shift. And believe me, those classrooms were the sacrifice of that. So by joyous, I don't mean happy all the time. What I mean is that I'm aligned with my knowing. I'm aligned with my truth, which is one of my pillars. And I know how to reconnect with myself when there's a flipped lid, which is another topic that I was considering talking with you about today, so that I know what to do and I'm resourced and balanced when muck hits the fan, so to speak. So that being said, here is one of my muck cycles, one of my caterpillar moments. So I was, jumped ahead. Oh, it revealed itself before you were supposed to know. Okay, well, you just gotta, you got a spoiler alert. So I was with a client, okay? I was with one of my clients in my parent coaching, and we were in the middle of a session, and we were like moving towards a breakthrough, and she was really emotional and talking through something really deep that was, and we were starting to move through some of the muck. It was pretty exciting. And I was also in the background single parenting, because I think my husband was at a drum circle. I don't know. I had told him about this client call, but you know, schedules and co-parenting partners sometimes. So he's at a drumming circle and I am with my daughter alone. And I'm only with my client for an hour. And I set her up for success and I give her, I think, 4 different snacks that she has access to and set her up for success with 3 toys. And we co-create the activities that she wants to lean into and name it, I did it, okay, to be proactive. And then, as you already saw, spoiler alert, this happens. I mean, she would not stop coming in to this room. By the way, she does not do this to my husband when he's in the exact same situation. So that's another topic. But anyway, now I could have chosen to be really ashamed and embarrassed in front of my client, right? And literally this picture is from the Zoom call because I had been recording it because it was this breakthrough that I wanted to gift her with after. I could have been really angry at Ella, right? I could have been embarrassed and stopped the call cold. There's so many things I could have done. I'm interested to see in the chat what you might have done in that moment or what you think I did instead. But that's what happened, right? So what could it have been a very stressful situation? I mean, like, here she is. Did you see that costume change, by the way? See, now in the middle of my session, I had to help her get dressed. And she was crying and she was playing and then she didn't want to stop being with me and she wouldn't leave me. And at some point, I think I also had to wipe her after a number 2 in the middle of this whole thing. And remember, it was just an hour. Really stressful, could have been. It was really powerful. It was a really amazing experience. And afterwards, I asked my client if I could share this with people. And we actually ended up having this whole amazing conversation about it. And she said, oh my goodness, you changed my mindset about everything. I can't believe it. Your child is like my child. Just the difference is how you approach it. It was just an eye-opening experience for all of us. And I'm just so glad that I didn't ignore my truth. So this is what got to happen. I got to model who and what I want to be for my child, right? Like who I want my child to be by modeling that myself and following my knowing and just staying with my truth and saying to her, Ella, I am with a client right now. I know that you want me. You get to have me in 45 minutes, and then it was in 30 minutes, and then it was in 20 minutes, right? Right now, she gets to witness me doing my work and not sacrificing my passion and my professional space for my parenthood in that moment. And she also gets to see me not stepping into the shame, anxiety, or guilt that could have happened. And she got a really amazing life lesson afterwards because we had this great conversation and we came up with a game plan of what to do next time. I mean, it was endless what ended up happening. Aha, Sean, take a break, extend your appointment. That is what my client said that she thought I would have done and what she would have done. Yes. So, but that's not what I did. I kept going. And Ella was just all crazy in the background. And my client still had we got to the breakthrough somehow. It was amazing. And we even got it even a better lesson. So that is my example of one of the ways that it's kind of like, we're in this butterfly parenting paradigm, but actually this is kind of how I was feeling at the moment, right? Can anybody relate to that? Like when you feel like you've set yourself up for success, you've read all the books, you've done all the things, and it's just still like, oh my goodness, what is happening and why and no and right? So before we talk about this shame, anger, fear trap, I want to invite you just to reflect a little bit about how you can shift into butterfly parenting in your life. So what I want to invite you to do is just take a moment for reflection in your journal and think about something that triggered you, either recently or something that keeps coming up. Because the thing is that when a trigger keeps coming up, it just means you're not finished with that thing yet. You still have things to sort out. It's actually a good thing. We get to actually say thank you to the trigger if we're able. And just reflect upon how you might approach next time or might have approached the exact same situation from a butterfly parenting perspective. Does that make sense, everybody? And in the workbook, I also talk about how it might affect your children in that way, right? Let's take a moment to reflect upon that. And then I'm going to invite some of you to share if you would like. Give you a few more moments for right now. Just fill out the workbook any way you want to. Anybody feel called to share, feel ready to share?
So I would like to share something. I'm not sure it goes really good with the butterfly and the caterpillar, but it's something about calming and taking a breath and something like this when the child comes.
Yeah.
My kid, well, Jaden has autistic. Well, he's autistic, and I has been taking him to the store with me. And he has really bad meltdowns. He's yelling, he's screaming, he wants to run away from me. And I know people knows when I'm at the store because my child cries really loud. And people have shout to me like, keep your child quiet. Why is he crying? Just keep him at home. And they are coming to me and sometimes they even make me cry. But I am never having like a phase where I get angry at them. And I just stay quiet. And I start talking to my son Jaden and say, oh, you're happy. And I'm trying to redirect him. And I try to stay as calm as I can. And some people either tell me, how can you do it? How do you handle it? And I'm like, I don't know. But I'm just trying to be like really calm because if I lose it, I don't know what can I do. And I had other two, like a baby that acts a lot like Jaden, and they have the same ways. And I'm just trying to control myself a lot. And then sometimes I'm really successful where I feel like I accomplished my day and I feel like, oh, this was a brand new day. This was such a joy having my kids so calm and enjoying their day and everything. And some others are so hard that it's even like harder for me to keep calm. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. It's hard. And I don't know if any parent can relate to this, but some parents like can make other parents feel ashamed of how the kids behave and they blame at us that we don't know how to educate our kids. And I don't know if you can tell me like a secret or a formula or something to be keeping my child like calm and relaxed and letting me know that the same way I feel relaxed with them, they can feel it with me and at other places. I don't know if you have ever felt like this.
Oh my goodness. First, do you pronounce Carolina?
Yes.
Perfect. Yay. So Carolina, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. I imagine every single one of us relates to that, right? I'm seeing everybody nod their heads. Beautiful. So first of all, I just want to normalize this and say we all are in it. We're all in it. The second thing I want to say is I invite us to consider what it might feel like if a successful day was not I stayed calm or my children stayed calm, but if it were instead, I allowed the truth to happen and I allowed it to happen. That's it. I stayed aligned with my knowing and I didn't let other people shame me because it's not their business. I didn't let things get to me. I didn't take things personally and I didn't make any assumptions. What if that were the way the world was? What if each one of us here today now went out next time we saw a parent struggling and when their kid was crying and they wanted to scream too, and maybe they do, we say, oh my goodness, I'm here for you. I'm so with you right now. How can I help? I mean, can you imagine what the world would be like if that's how we treated one another, especially when you're witnessing someone else in the muck? And I guarantee that 9 times out of 10, that person who's shaming, it's because they're feeling bad about themselves in some way. And they're just projecting it on us. So that doesn't fix the problem, but I just wanted to offer that perspective. And then the second thing that I want to say, which is also a whole other presentation, but I'll just speak to it for a split second, is about the flip lid. Does anybody know what the flip lid is? Just raise hands for a second. Oh my goodness. Okay, beautiful. Some of you. So very, very briefly, just the brain science of it. Carolina, you are actually doing something incredible intuitively. And anyone who knows about the flip lid knows what you're doing. So very, 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 very briefly, if we put up our hand like this, and our thumb is the amygdala, and that is our animal feeling brain, and our four fingers here are the prefrontal cortex, which is our thinking brain. This is how our brains usually are. But when we are overstimulated, triggered in some way with our sensory cup, or triggered from a story, or the shame, fear, anger, anxiety cycle, which I'll talk to in a moment, what happens is that the lid flips. And our thinking brain completely disconnects from its feeling brain. And so in that moment, we actually revert back to fight, flight, freeze, or actually annihilate mode, which is explains a lot of the social justice issues that are happening in policing right now. But we go back into that. And just anyone raise of hands, can anyone reason with you when you're in fight, flight, or freeze? No, right? Like no one can, right? And same thing for our children. But the thing is that what happens usually in these situations, and Carolina, by the way, I've been in it past 4 hikes that we've been on. That exact thing that you just said about the supermarket happened with Ella because she was groggy when she woke up, and it was crazy. Anyway, if you follow me on Facebook, you can read my whole story about that. It's a good one. But 9 times out of 10, when our children's lids are flipped, it's because of us, because our lids have flipped first, or because of our reaction, it flips their lids. And then also with neurodiverse children, there's a lot of sensory stuff as well, right? And there are a lot of ways that we need, all different ways we need to modify and scaffold experience in order to reinforce, right? And create as successful an environment as we can, right? A supportive environment we can. So the lid is flipped, no reasoning to be had. And what you were doing, Carolina, what you are noticing about yourself is you are intuitively reconnecting with yourself. That's what I believe you're doing. That's what it sounds like to me. You are finding ways to calm down and serve yourself and ground and balance in the moment so that you can then approach your children and serve them from the perspective that they need and deserve. And I see a comment here, I've done that, meltdown happening in public, asked if I could help. Usually the child stops screaming, an energy shift happens, and I try and engage in a calm and interested way. I even offer fidget snacks and simply listening. Beautiful. Sometimes all it takes is somebody else's perspective, right? And by the way, there's a list of something like 100 rapid resets and calm down strategies that each person it's different for. And in each situation, it could be different for. And one of the things that I do with parents is help them identify which ones are their go-tos for themselves, right? And then also what might then serve our children. And then we can be kind of balanced and yes, brain gym is a great example of that. Exactly. It's a way to reconnect during the flip lid so that we can serve. So I thank you for that comment, Carolina. I hope that answered a little teeny bit and gave you a little insight. And I hope it's buoying you and like that you're patting yourself on the back. I really do hope so.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it does. Like I read just right now in the chat, like some chips, something to keep the child calm. And believe me, I try that as well. But the child is a child, and especially when they have like, this sensory stuff going on. Not every kid is the same. Maybe not all the faculties you can see them in person. And people just so hard sometimes. And they see it, and I see it, and like you said, just keep it calm, keep like connected with yourself. If you disconnect from yourself, you're also connected to your kid, and the kid is gonna get worse. And it's something I have learned from years.
And I'm seeing people saying that you avoid public spaces. It's impossible even going to the store. I get it, right? And so what might we say? Well, then you don't go, like, that's okay then, right? Can we relinquish the how about that, about how we thought parenting needed to look and feel? And I don't want to be assumptive here, but perhaps if in any way, shape, or form you are feeling like a failure because you can't go into public spaces, how do we redefine that, right? Because honestly, you don't deserve that on your head also, right? So how might we then just shift into a different perspective, a paradigm about what works for you and your family and what is right and aligned and what is not? And if you're a family that just cannot bring your child to the store, you are a family that cannot bring your child to the store. And that is still beautiful and wonderful and okay. I'm a family that cannot put my child to bed before 10, no matter what. And I'm terrified of her going to kindergarten in 2 weeks. I mean, it is what it is in so many ways. I really thank all of you for sharing your truth about that. So when all of these things happen, most of us fall into sheer fear, shame, or anger. And it's a trap. So my question to you right now is, which one do you think you most are? And I invite you just to write in the chat. I'm shame, for sure. Your first grader has never in bed before 10. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, right. So I'm shame. Who else is shame? Who is led by fear? I know that's my father. Who is led by anger, right? And those are our truths. Beautiful. Shame, fear, shame, all. Okay. So when this happens, I believe there are 3 ways we most harm ourselves. And this kind of goes into my analogy again of the caterpillar to butterfly parenting. So, and I also want to share how then we can surrender into the guru instead. Okay. Oh, anxiety. Anxiety and fear, I think perhaps are in the same bucket. Anyone who suffers from anxiety, you tell me what you think. It seems to me that it's connected. Yeah, so 3 ways that we most harm ourselves and how we might surrender to the guru instead. So this is what I think. This is what I've learned from just working with children and parents for so many years. The 3 ways that we harm ourselves are being so super regretful and ashamed of the past, or embarrassed of the past, or just feeling horrible about the past and not being able to get past the past. The second way we most harm ourselves is just anxiety and fear about the future, about this esoteric future that we can't even control or imagine. I mean, could any one of us have predicted COVID, for instance, right? But we have this tendency as human beings, it's actually one of the most beautiful things about us, how creative we are. But sometimes we get into this trap of being so frozen by our fear of the future. And then in the present, it's this comparison trap. It's the good, bad binary. It's this, in my opinion, lie about perfection and success and failure. I think all 3 of those are lies. I don't think there is any such thing as failure. I think that's just learning and growing. And that's something that I keep having to repeat to myself. Perfection is just a lofty term for impossible. And anyone who claims to be perfect, in my opinion, is either lying to themselves or all of us. There's no such thing as Pinterest perfect. Right? And what is success? I mean, how might we redefine success in our society? I mean, why must every single one of us feel required to raise children who are superstars in every single thing? That just makes 0 sense to me. Right? So those are the 3 ways we most harm ourselves. I would like to know how people relate to this and where you are on the spectrum. But then there's this other way, there's the butterfly parenting way. And so I say, and I invite us all today to consider, instead of regretting the past, how might we become complete with our past? How might we say, that is what has happened up to now. It does not mean that it is a recipe for what will be. And it led us to this beautiful moment How might we get complete with that and even celebrate the ups and downs? And if I had time, I would be telling you a story about this Zen farmer that I love, who just he experiences horrible things and everyone's upset about it. And he says maybe, and he has successes and everybody's happy for him. And he says maybe, and then horrible things happen and everyone's so sorry for him. He says maybe, etc. You get the idea. That's my summary of the story. So instead of regretting the past, how might we get complete with the past? Instead of fearing the future, how might we instead align with our norm and say, okay, this is the story society is telling me about what parenthood needs to be. This is the story society is telling me, and I have learned from my parents, from my friends, from my colleagues, from myself, from media, of what a good child looks like, or what a complete child acts like. And trust the future instead, because as long as you are following your body compass and just continuing to check in and ask yourself, is this my truth? Or am I getting stuck in a lie or in a story I've been told? Is this my truth? We can trust the future. We can celebrate it. It's going to be beautiful, because even in the muck, you're going to be doing it your way. And how might we, instead of comparing ourselves, all the comparison stories in the present, how might we have compassion instead? So I want to invite us all to just take this deep, loving breath in. And allow yourselves to be compassionate for yourselves and your experience, and just let it out. And I invite you to reflect on this. Because the thing is that it's our choice how we're going to react to whatever challenge comes our way. And we get to decide, do we want to be the caterpillar parent and stuck in the story and in the fear trap or the shame trap, or, like feel like we have to justify and all that, or do we surrender to the goo and do it our way and do it a beautiful way? And it's going to be messy, but at least we're aligned. And that's how I've come to the place where I've never yet, at least, lost it with my child. I've lost it with my husband. But this is the thing. That's what the path actually looks like between caterpillar to butterfly parenting, right? So I just want to normalize that for a second, because we're going to feel really good, and then it's going to be like, whoa, like all the ups and downs, right? All of it. So I want to make sure that we just allow ourselves to be in it. And that's how we stay boldly joyous. We just move on this path and we allow it to happen. So I know
Thank you. That was really good. And did everybody else just like absorb all that? Take a deep breath. I like the way we started. We kind of got our mindset in there. If you guys want, we can open up. I'm gonna let you finish because I kind of cut you off, and I'm sorry, but we're at 7:35. If you need to go, that's fine. If you'd like to stay, Savon, if you have a few minutes, if not, I can stay for a little bit and we can kind of open up and chat. We've got a small group, so we'll just stay together, but I'm going to let you finish your sentence. And
okay. And I'm going to share my email and my website with you, because what I wanted to offer is that if any of this resonated with you, just for being here, I would love to gift you. Right now, I have made time in my schedule to gift anyone who feels called to it. I have room for 4 free sessions, free calls where we can just get into it and really serve you. And I would really love to work with you in any way that you want around values-based parenting, or shifting the muck, or figuring out your blocks. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and just write your name, your full name, and your email in the chat, so that I can reach out to you. I would love to do that for you. Thank you. I'm so glad that some people already said. So the last thing I just wanted to say was, you get to do you. And I want to invite all of us to just take off our muted mics for a second And I want to just celebrate. Can we all be unapologetically grateful? Can we all just, say we get to be enough and we get to ask for what we need and be grateful about it unapologetically. Are you ready to say this with me? I will be
unapologetically grateful.
Grateful.
Okay, so you get to ask for what you need. Okay, and then in an unapologetic way, and then say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's when I really want to be grateful.
So I want to stay. I have to plug in or I'm going to lose you.
Okay, and if you can stop recording now, I'm going to reclaim host, and please do save that on your computer and we'll figure that out later.
Stop the recording and then I'm going to plug in and then I would love
Thank you. And if I am private messaging you, thank you for sending that back. I did a really bad job looking at the kids last time, so I'm trying to better myself.
I think you actually, if you're not reclaiming host, you have to stop the recording.
Oh, okay. Well, let me see if I can figure that out.
It's not letting me anymore. It's just letting me press record, which doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go plug in so I don't lose all of you.
Okay.
And please, right